In this video, we are going to be going over coordinate grids. So what is a coordinate grid and how do I plot points on the grid? Here is an example of a coordinate grid. So a coordinate grid has a few parts to it. First of all, we have two axes. We have the x-axis and the y-axis. Whenever you have to do problems with a coordinate grid, I would recommend writing x and y so you remember which one is which. Next, we have two number lines. So here's the number line for the x. We have positives, and then like a mirror, we have the negatives. Same up here for y. Positives, then mirror image, the negatives. And then what we do is we put points on the grid. So we would be given a point to graph. So for example, it might say to graph 3, 4. So whenever I'm graphing and I'm given here, this is called an ordered pair. I'm given an ordered pair, I always think to myself, what comes first in the alphabet, X or Y? Well, if I'm thinking about what I know about the alphabet, X comes first. So when I'm writing my ordered pair, it'll always be X, then Y. Also, when you have problems like this, I would recommend writing this at the top too. So if I'm given a problem like this, 3, 4, that means that this is going to be X and this is Y. So I go over 3 on the X and then up 4 on the Y and figure out where these points meet. So that's about right here. And I draw my dot. Now, there also might be a time when you have something like this. -7, 6. So once again, I'm going to write x, y to remind myself x comes first, then y. So -7, 6. I go over to -7 first on the x always comes first. Then I go up 6 on the y and figure out where these two meet. So it would be about right here. So that would be how I find points on the graph. Here's a little bit of a trickier example. Let's say 2 1/2 and -3 1/2. So first things first, I remind myself this is x, this is y, and really I do this just the same as I did these. I go x first, 2 1/2. I find where's 2 1/2 on the x, right here. Then I go to -3 1/2 on the y. So down here, here's -2, -3, -4. So I know that -3 1/2 is going to go, it comes down more after -3, but not quite to -4. It's going to be right here. So I figure out where this x and this y right here meet. So that's going to be about right here. Another type of problem you might get with coordinate grids is to give the ordered pair of points that are already drawn on the coordinate grid. So here's how I would do this. So if I'm trying to figure out where is A, first I will find point A. Then I will remind myself that this side is x, this side is y. So I'm going to look first. What's the x for this point here? -3. So that is what I will write for the x. Then I look at what is the y. I go over and it's at 2. So my y would be 2. I do the same thing for all of these points. Here's B. First I do x. So B go up to x is -1. And then I go over to y -4 is my y. Then for C, x first. Well, here's the x line here. Noticing it's between -1 and +1. If I'm thinking of a number line right here, this would be 0. So my x for C is 0. Then for the y, here's my y line. And once again, it's between -1 and +1. So it would be at 0 here. So 0, 0. Fun fact, this point here has a special name. It's called the origin. It's where the x and the y cross, right here, 0, 0. It's called the origin. Then lastly, point D, I go x first, 4, then over to my y, 2. So +4, +2. So if you would like extra practice on coordinate grids, here is another example of a coordinate grid. You can draw this into your math notebook if you have it, or just on a piece of paper. Draw this coordinate grid with these 4 points, and your job will be to find the ordered pairs of each of the points, and then graph these ordered pairs. So you'll put, where's 3, -6? You'll put the dot there, and write a little E next to it. Do E, F, G, H. So when you're done, so you'll pause the video, and then when you're done, play it again to check your answers. So go ahead and pause the video now. So these are the answers you should have had. First, before I did anything, I wrote down this is X, this is Y to remind myself. I also wrote X, Y to remind myself the order. I did the same thing over here. And for A, it's at 1, 1. B, -5, -6, C, -2, +3. Then D, on the x-axis, x comes first, we're at 9. And then the Y, going along here, where's my Y at? Well, this is 0, so it's 9, 0. Next, to graph the ordered pairs, 3, -6, you would draw a dot here and write E next to it. F, right here. G, I'm at +6.5 on the X. My Y is 5. And then H, over here, here's -7.5. And I go down to -4.5, and I draw my H there. Hopefully now you have a little bit of a better understanding of how to graph on a coordinate grid.